Okay, so we're about to pretty much wrap up on the build. So the only thing I've done is, while I was off camera, is attach the fly barless controller onto the plate and then screw the plate down. We just these four screws, that one, that one, that one, that one's pretty straightforward. Also installed the extra satellite because I'm going to rebind this to the AR7210, so now we have everything on there. And ran the wires and put a little bit of sleeve on the wires just so it doesn't chafe from long-term use. The servo wires, as you can see, just to show you, mine runs through there, and I put a little tie strap on the bearing block. It's perfect, goes through there, and then the heli has these holes just for zip tie, tying down, so it's perfect. So here it is, that's what it looks like. I labeled the servos right now in accordance to the AR7210's designation for the ports, just so it's easy to see. This one is number 1, which is the elevator servo. Number 2, typically what they call the aileron servo. Number 3, which is the pitch servo. And so that's how it's gonna plug in. And I'll do that right now. We'll plug number 1, this servo, to channel 1, basically the elevator servo to channel 1, and negative for this on servo's bottom, so the brown wire goes like facing the bottom of the controller. Let's move this over to the other side. Okay, that's port number 1. Number 2 is the front servo here, which is aileron. And that is my shorter one. Here, I get to number 2 port. And then number 3 is the pitch servo, the one here on the right. And then number 3. And then number 4 is the rudder servo. So there. And from here we can start programming the AR7210, and I'll do more wire cleanup later. Right now what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and plug in the extension from the Talon to my throttle channel. There you go. Actually, this is the perfect time to rebind the model, so I'll go ahead and put a bind plug on it so we get to bind the satellite as well. So binding right now. Okay, that's bound. You see the satellite's lit solid. Oh, by the way, I used a shorter satellite cable which I had laying around. It comes with a cable, but it was a little too long for my liking, so I just used one of these 6-inch ones. Okay, so right now with this setup, be careful, the motor is going to be armed. I tend to use, I'm not using a big 6S pack, I'm just using a small 3S pack just to be sure if any accidents the motor's not like spinning at full power. What we're going to do now is program it. Okay, so let's go ahead and do kind of the, I would say the last setup. It's the last setup for the controller will require you to have the blade so you can set the angle and the pitch degrees. So, but we're gonna go ahead and get the setup pretty close to what it should be. So we're gonna go in setup mode first. Solid light. So this is horizontal with sockets to the front. So status light is off. That's fine. B is the servo frequency, which we set before, which is gonna be solid blue for B. C is solid blue as well for 1520. D is flashing blue for 33 hertz. E is rudder servo endpoints. Let me show you how to do that. Hopefully you can see the entire thing. Oh, my mistake. Back up. Okay. So here you would move your stick to the max without binding, and as you can see the tail's moving, getting close. I'll stop a few millimeters away and it will flash, showing that it saved it, and it will go the other direction, let go, and then that's it. So that's setting the travel for the tail. F is rudder sensor direction. I already checked this earlier, so for this setup, for the super combo, it's blue. The way to check it is if you have the tail blades installed, which I don't right now, is when you push the model to that direction, that the trailing edge should be pushing. The back of the blade basically is pushing the same direction. So for this setup, it's blue with the super combo. And then G is for the servo centering, which we already did prior to installing the servo, so that's already set. H is the swash plate mixer, which is 120. We did that also. It's going to be red. Swash plate servo direction. You want them all going, at the same direction. And here we got it moving on blue, all in the same direction. However, it is reversed. So the pitch when you raise your radio is actually giving negative pitch. So you would need to go to your radio and reverse that channel. So now it's correcting at the right direction. Okay, so J is to set the cyclic pitch geometry. You'd be measuring 6 degrees once you tilt the sticks. Since we don't have the blades, I'm going to skip that for now. K is the pitch range, which I won't do as well right now with no blades. L is cyclic limit. So how you do that is you tilt your max travel, your swash, and then make sure there's no binding, and you can reduce it by doing that. So that sets the limit of the swash. Okay, no binding. Okay. And then M is swash blade servo direction. So this is important. What you need is, there you go, when you tilt it forward, I'm not sure you guys can see this, but the servo counteracts when you tilt the model forward, the swash should tilt backward, so it counters. Now tilting right, that is correct as well. So blue is the setting for the correction. That's correct, that's correct, that's correct. Okay, so it's blue. And then last, not last, let's see. Oh, and the N is RPM governor, which I won't be using right now, so I'll leave that status light to off. Okay, so that completes the primary, like the main setup for the controller. So the next step I would be doing is attaching the blades, the tail blades, and then setting the parameter J and K for the degrees in pitch. The parameter menu, this is all a preference in terms of how you would like your model to behave, but just to kind of give you guys kind of a quick starter on how I set up my models. On parameter menu, all you have to do is press and quickly, you don't hold it. So now you're in parameter settings. A, that is the cyclic and rudder trim, safe trim. I'm not going to use that for now. I'm going to do control behavior. This is where you got the various settings for how the heli behaves in the air. I like to fly mine on transmitter for B. So which is blue. And then tail rate consistency. So as I'm going through this, everything is a lot of it is preference and setup while it's flying, so I won't be able to do much of a setup now until I get the heli off the ground. So I will just go ahead and exit this menu. And now the final step would probably be for you is to also, by the time hopefully you have your Castle Link programmer, you go ahead and program your Castle ESC to take it off airplane mode, because that's how it comes from the factory. And there's plenty of videos that shows how to program the Castle ESCs with regards to using set RPM, and I will give you what you would be probably be interested in setting up, and those are the extra parameters for the ESC. So bear with me here. Okay, so for the Castle ESC, you'd be setting up if you do set RPM, the pinion of the model is 11, the main gear is 112, the KV of the motor is 1300, the number of poles for the motor is 8. PWM is going to be 8, timing 0, motor start power, it's, you know, that's kind of preference. I put 100, and I will start with a gov gain of 7. That's a personal preference, and remember this, and then remember to leave the BEC at 6 volts. Okay, so I will be doing that, and I'll basically, once I clean up all the wirings, I'll come back and do a wrap up. All right, so here is the final touch-ups for the heli. And right now it's plugged in, so I could kind of show you some things. I put some tape right now on the wire for the satellite. We just don't want that wire flopping around during maiden. If you leave that flopping around, eventually you will wear, it will stress out the connections, the wires here by the connector, and may lead to some breakage. But I'll make that pretty later. When I installed the plate, I should have installed the strap for the controller. It's hard to get in there, but I'll do that later as well. Tail blades installed, and I spooled up the model with, of course, no main blades out in the safe area. Tail correction is right. Tail movement's great on the ground. So heli's ready for maiden. And this will wrap up the build video. And again, I want to remind everyone, my build videos are just done as a guide for you. I am no way responsible. If you have failures, I just want to be clear with that. I leave it up to you to make sure that you do your build right, and with safety in mind. Make sure you check all your bolts all your connections, and when you fly, make sure you fly at a safe place. So till then, thanks for watching.